Larry, there's a lot of drama going on as people's attention turns toward the case playing out in Emmett Sullivan's courtroom, Michael Flynn, of course, but there's so many federal cases going on. Good to see you, Larry. How you doing today?
Good, thank you, Jason.
That's the case that's on everybody's mind, primarily because I think most people who watch Crowdsource the Truth agree that Michael Flynn was taken out because the deep state didn't like him, not because of anything having to do with the FBI.
Well, certainly that appears to be the case, and I think Sidney Powell's doing a very good job in uncovering the truth here, that there was a withholding of exculpatory evidence, there was other prosecutorial misconduct. I just caution her because I know Judge Sullivan quite well. I've been in front of him many times, and I have cases right now as well, is that I wouldn't grandstand this on Fox News because you want the judge to come around on his own to what went on. He has a history with regard to Senator Ted Stevens of throwing prosecutions out when there was prosecutorial misconduct. I think it's a big mistake to go on Hannity. I think it's a big mistake to go on Hannity in any circumstance, frankly. That's my bias. But what she's doing is very, very good. I would just play it cool right now and see what happens. Judge Flynn had a lawyer, Joseph Kellner. That individual came from Covington and Burling. That's the law firm of Eric Holder, of Lanny Brewer, former head of the criminal division Brewer under Obama, basically a Democrat law firm. The guy's primary expertise was Federal Election Commission law. He was not a criminal defense lawyer. They billed Flynn through the wazoo. Poor guy, lost his house and everything else. That is not the way to go. And in fact, I was saying that a long time ago to people that were close to General Flynn to get another lawyer. And, fortunately, Sidney Powell is competent. She uncovered some things. And I hope that the Judge Sullivan will have enough humility, and he does have humility. Of all the Democrat judges over there, he's the best one, and he's better than some of the Republicans. In fact, that's not saying much, as we're going to get into in a few minutes. But I do respect Judge Sullivan. It just don't ram it down his throat. Don't grandstand it.
Yeah.
Just go in there and make this argument, and it may come out in your favor.
Yeah, it's interesting, Larry, I think a lot of people don't have very much experience at all observing court cases beyond just hearing little snippets in the news. And I had the rare and interesting opportunity to see you, I guess you'd call it practice, before Judge Sullivan. Is that what it was? But the way that you communicated with him, the subtleties and the understanding that you gained. The judges, although they are obviously intended to be impartial, they are human beings. And so if anything is done to embarrass them or irritate them or whatever, there is a possibility it could have some outcome, right?
That's true in any court. Of course, we're going to get into the problems with the federal judiciary that are inherent in the way they're chosen and who they are, generally speaking. But Judge Sullivan generally has a really good judicial temperament. He is tough. When I sued Dick Cheney and his task force, energy task force, many years ago when I was running Judicial Watch, which I founded, he wanted the case to go forward. He wanted to get into discovery. Cheney had hid who was on his energy task force. We later found out they were the oil companies, and they were dividing up the oil in Iraq. Once we invaded Iraq, of course, Trump's right, we were stupid. We never even got the oil after that. But it wasn't Judge Sullivan's fault. Of course, that was Cheney. He was a Republican.
Yeah.
But Judge Sullivan does have, I think, the judicial temperament to allow a case to go forward against a prosecutor, such as Mueller in this case, that is basically a Democrat, even though he's a registered Republican. So I wouldn't push him too hard. Make the arguments in court. Don't go on the most politicized show on the right, which is Sean Hannity. That's a mistake.
Yeah. So basically the way it's set up, the way it's intended to work, is that these judges are given long tenures and great power so that they aren't influenced by the type of political things that can influence congressmen, right? I mean, what's the basic premise of how it's supposed to work, and what's the problem?
I've always said that our founding fathers were enlightened by God, but they weren't God, Jason. And they made some mistakes. And I think their biggest mistake, from my perspective, who's been a lawyer now for 42 years, is that they gave federal judges life tenure.
Yeah.
Another big mistake was to give the president the power to appoint them. Okay, two major mistakes. And let's deal with the last one first, is that the way federal judges get appointed is through political patronage, generally speaking. The best and the brightest are not necessarily chosen for the bench. If you come from a very big law firm, say Wilmer Hale, for instance, there are two judges on the court right now in District of Columbia from Wilmer Hale, one a Republican, one a Democrat. Not only did they give a large amount of money, one of them, Randolph Moss, gave $38,000 to Obama and Democrats. He effectively purchased his judgeship, but he came from Wilmer Hale, and they bundled a lot more money to get him a judgeship. And then comes along another judge from Wilmer Hale. I frankly forget the name right now, so I don't want to use it until I remember it, but that's a Republican judge. And they spent a lot of money to get him or her that post. So now they've got two of their own on the court. Now that helps when you're recruiting clients, when you're signing clients up. It helps in terms of decision making, and they tend to bend over backwards, obviously, for their former partners at Wilmer Hale. So there's one problem there. And then the second problem is, by giving them life tenure, they can act as if they are above the law. They're not held accountable. Now, in the days after the Constitution was enacted, judges were removed for bad behavior, which means that drunkenness, not showing up one time, bad demeanor, that kind of thing. And that went by the wayside. Now you have to catch a judge red-handed taking a bribe across his desk to impeach him. I mean, I'm being serious. And a number of years ago, Judge Alice Hastings was, from Miami, impeached for taking a bribe. Now, this is right out of Distinguished Gentlemen. We've talked about that before, too. Eddie Murphy. What happened after Judge Hastings was impeached? He ran for Congress and became a congressman. He's been a congressman ever since.
Wow.
Okay, this is a testament to the corruption of Washington, D.C. Not the capital of corruption, it's the cesspool of corruption. And these judges are so politicized by the time they get to the bench that they pay back the favors to the benefactors that got them their jobs, whether it's large law firms, labor unions, corporations, or whatever. The courts are generally packed with yes men from these very big special interests. And that's extremely dangerous on the federal bench. And it's why, frankly, Jason, whenever I can, I try to file a case these days in front of a state court judge, because in most jurisdictions, those judges can be held accountable. They can be voted out of office because most judges are elected. I used to think that was an inferior system because, those who have the money, law firms, labor unions, et cetera, they donate to the judges. The contributions go for political advertising. But at least you have a safeguard in that you can vote them out if they do something which is outrageous, like letting a rapist out of jail or something like that he goes off and rapes somebody else again, or she. So this is the problem with the federal system, and I've seen it repeatedly, and it's getting more pronounced over the years, to the point where if you have a case that has a political element or a social element to it, like abortion, you can gauge with almost 100% certainty how those judges are going to come out, how they're going to rule. Now, I wrote a column last week. You can find it at freedomwatchusa.org. It was published on worldnetdaily.com and on reclaimamerica.com. And it's called The Problem with Federal Judges. Now, let's go back and look at just recent history. President Trump, is trying to limit illegal immigration, quite correctly, appropriately. He put into effect a policy on asylum, so you can't get asylum so easily and come across the border. A judge in San Francisco by the name of John Tiger, a very leftist judge, graduate of Berkeley Law School. His father is Michael Tiger. His father is a highly partisan individual, ultra-leftist, sat on a disciplinary committee panel with regard to me, made a recommendation that I should be suspended from the practice of law for 33 months. Basically, he's very politicized. I don't want to use any incendiary language because I'm confident I'll prevail, on appeal. I've got 2 stages of appeal. But this guy had previously filed an ethics complaint against Kellyanne Conway, Michael Tiger, the father of John Tiger, the judge who enjoined Trump from implementing his asylum policy to limit illegal immigration, filed an ethics complaint against Kellyanne Conway for simply remarks she made on MSNBC, and then along with 16 other leftist law professors, publicized it. You're not supposed to publicize ethics complaints until there's a conclusion. The bar associations are trying to remove conservative lawyers like they are trying to do a number on Trump and others. District of Columbia Bar, the Bar Council have donated heavily to Hillary Clinton, Obama, and others. I don't know of one person in the office was donated to any Republican, if you look at FEC records. So there's a very partisan aspect to this. Fast forward, Michael Tiger, the father of John Tiger, intervenes in the case involving my client Arpaio. Now, he knew or had reason to know that I was Arpaio's lawyer, yet he's sitting on a disciplinary panel concerning me in a frivolous case that was filed there. And he argues in front of the Ninth Circuit that Arpaio's pardon should be nullified. The matter should be sent back to the lower court judge in Arizona, Judge Susan Bolton, which could have the effect of having Arpaio put in prison for up to 6 months.
Wow.
If the pardon is nullified and she's sentenced. Now, how does a guy do that with my client when he's sitting on a disciplinary panel involving me? So I say this because these judges are very, very similar, okay, is that John Tiger is very leftist. Other judges are very leftist. So when Tiger issued the decision against Trump, which enjoined his immigration policy on asylum, Trump simply said, gee, another Obama judge ruled against me. No surprise. Now, what happens then? The Chief Justice of our Supreme Court, John Roberts, who's been going left and left and left. He's the one that gave us Obamacare. He's made a number of rulings siding with the leftists on the Supreme Court. He's a closet leftist. You know, he may be a closet something else too, but I don't hold that against him. But there are rumors in Washington for many, many years to that effect. And maybe that's why, you know, he can be coerced. Maybe he doesn't want that to come out. I don't know. Nobody cares anymore that whether someone's gay or not, frankly. They just don't care.
Married?
Okay. But I don't know. Yeah, but the old timers, they do care. But the reality here is that what Roberts said was in response to Trump's remarks, which are absolutely right, because both leftist media and rightist media always make reference to the fact of who appointed the judge, because you can tell usually the basis and how they're going to rule just based on who appointed them. Roberts says, well, we don't have Obama judges. We don't have Clinton judges. We don't have Bush judges. We're all neutral. We're all independent. We all decide things on the merits. Politics don't enter into decisions. Well, you know what? Roberts should become Supreme Court Justice on Pluto, okay, not in Washington, D.C. He's on another planet here. And this is the reality of what we're dealing with today. And it's not just with regard to leftist judges. It's also with regard to conservative judges, is that I can gauge how a judge is going to rule almost with 100% certainty on a matter that involves a political issue or involves a social issue like abortion based on who appointed him, which president. Now, there was an exception last Friday, and we'll get into what happened last Friday, but this underscored to me why we need to find a new way to select judges and a new way to police judges and get them off the bench if they exercise their politics rather than obeying the rule of law and the Constitution. They need to be impeached for not following the rule of law.
Larry, isn't this kind of the inherent problem? Like what you've just described is this mechanism by which law firms, they kind of want this, right? Law firms have a lot of money. When they can pay to get one of their people on the bench, that's sort of thumb on the scale in their favor, thumb on the scale of justice in their favor. So really the problem is the same problem in all of Washington, D.C. The people that would be voting to change this are the people that are benefiting from the corrupt system. So we, the people, want it to change, but the just us system doesn't. What could we possibly do?
This is exactly, let me back up a little bit. This is exactly the primary reason that we fought a revolution in 1776. Because what happened is that King George III and the British Crown took our criminal justice system back to England, to the Court of St. James. We could no longer adjudicate our own cases in the colonies. So what's happened here is the very powerful special interests, the law firms, the mega law firms, the labor unions, the corporations, and others, have hijacked federal judges. Generally speaking, they have them in their pocket. And that is why you can judge, no pun intended, with almost exact certainty how judges are going to rule. Now, there's some exceptions in other areas. Now, what really, shook me up last Friday is that a judge who I've always respected and liked, a judge who made good rulings for me when I was running Judicial Watch, and thereafter Judge Royce C. Lamberth, although I did see politics entering into what he did even during that period of time, dismissed a defamation case that I brought for Sheriff Joe Arpaio against CNN, Chris Cuomo, Jeff Zucker, the CEO of CNN, Rolling Stone, and Huffington Post. They branded Sheriff Arpaio a convicted felon. He is not a convicted felon. He was found liable for a misdemeanor for his deputies allegedly going out and profiling day worker sites where there are illegal immigrants. By the way, where are you going to find illegal immigrants at day worker sites? But that being aside, is that there was clearly defamation here. Now, Judge Lamberth, I would have thought he would have ruled in favor of Arpaio, and he did in a very, and no disrespect to the judge, because I'm thankful for things that he's done in the past, but it was a very two-faced ruling, and you can find it on our website, or you just Google it at freedomwatchusa.org. He said that Arpaio had been defamed, in effect, that it wasn't substantially true that he was a convicted felon, as these publications published. And, of course, they try to get to Arpaio to get to the president, because they both are close, you see. And this is a way to smear both of them at the same time. And then he said this was very damaging to Arpaio, even though he's a political candidate. But he dismissed the case with prejudice, which means forever, claiming that we hadn't pled with enough specificity whether there was actual malice, which is knowing that it's true or publishing something with a reckless disregard for the truth. And I told Judge Lamberth, I said, Your Honor, if you want more specificity, this is when we had oral argument, I can give you more specificity if the other side's complaining in the complaint. Just grant me leave to amend. And leave to amend is to be freely granted at the early part of a case. But rather than doing that, he dismissed the case outright. Tried to give us a bone, saying, okay, Arpaio's been defamed and he was damaged, but then at the same time dismissing it, saying we must protect First Amendment rights. Well, there are no First Amendment rights to defame someone.
Right.
Now, I believe that he did this. See, this is what I saw Lamberth do during my time at Judicial Watch. I had a case called the Filegate case, which was 900 FBI files, which Hillary Clinton had ordered up through Craig Livingstone, her lackey at the White House, into political adversaries. Some were even on her side, like James Carville. She didn't totally trust the people who were supposed to be helping her. And Hillary Clinton was the lead defendant. Lamberth would never allow me to take Hillary's deposition before he ultimately dismissed the case 6 or 7 years later. After I took a lot of depositions, I created a lot. Yeah, but never. How do you not depose the lead defendant when the case goes forward? And he allowed me to take those depositions, I believe, because in his own way, he wanted to weaken Clinton. Okay, I mean, this is the political motivation here, and of course, by weakening Clinton, you weakened Al Gore, and Al Gore lost by a hair to that idiot George W. Bush.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, and that's what I think his motivation was. And then, of course, there was the first Hillary Clinton email scandal, where she hid over 100 million emails claiming there was a computer glitch, not produced to Judicial Watch, not produced to Ken Starr, not produced to Congress. We went through a 3-month criminal contempt trial. And 2 or 3 years later, after I left to run for the U.S. Senate and was already off doing other things in my home state of Florida, he finally dismisses it and never brings about justice. At that point, George W. Bush had already been elected. Okay, so I guess maybe Judge Lamberth lost interest. But, I love the guy as a person. I'm thankful for what he did. He's the best of what's out there. But you see, even he can be affected by the politics. And I believe that he did this because he was splitting the baby in two. I always talk plainly, and he'll probably, see this video at some point. So I don't mean any disrespect, but he's getting ready to make a decision on whether Hillary Clinton should be subject to more discovery in a Freedom of Information Act case. And I know Judge Lamberth, this is the way to split the baby in two, okay? I'm not going to get CNN angered or Huffington Post or Rolling Stone, because I'm going to make this really strong decision, and I don't want to be smeared the way Arpaio has been smeared. And then there's another aspect, too, is that the media made my client, who's a good man, never heard a racist word out of him against Latinos or anybody else. They made him radioactive. So Lambert didn't want to get too close to Arpaio. And I've seen that with others, such as Judge Roy Moore, my client, and Jerry Corsi and others. And this is a kind of politics now you're seeing from the right, okay? But the politics which is most pronounced is the politics from the left, because they know no bounds. And dismissed on the very same day was a case I brought for Jerry Corsi against Robert Mueller by Judge Helen Siegel-Uvell.
Bad day.
A Clinton appointee. You were at the hearing with Corsi at the time. And what she was saying to me was so disingenuous, so dishonest, frankly. I pled that Mueller had to have ordered his prosecutors. He was the head of the office. He had to have ordered them to threaten Jerry Corsi with being indicted for perjury unless he would lie and implicate the president in Russian collusion, in crimes. Mm-hmm. And she says to me, "You don't have any proof of that, do you, Mr. Klayman?" I said, "Judge Uvell, you know what? I don't need proof right now that he's the head of the office. The buck stops there. If you don't think he's in charge and he didn't order that, then we all live on Pluto." And she came back and said, "Well, I guess then I live on Mars, Mr. Klayman."
Yeah.
And, and then I said, "Your Honor, I'll tell you what. You order up discovery here or put Mueller on the stand, and let's ask him under oath. If you don't think my case should proceed now," because you see, the rule is, this is the law, that it's called pleading at the first part of the case, is that you have to accept what's said in the complaint is true. And then discovery will allow the defendants an opportunity to prove otherwise. And if they can prove otherwise, they can move for summary judgment and get the case dismissed at that time, but not in the beginning.
I'm glad you're bringing this up, Larry, because this is an important point, and a lot of people don't understand these type of intricacies. And I just want to clarify, because as I understand it, when I've said this to people before, they mistakenly think that means all you got to do is submit a complaint and the court says, "Oh, this is true." There's definitely a distinct difference between what the court considers true versus the defendant being found guilty, right?
That's right. It's not guilty. It's a little bit like a grand jury in a way, but it's more stringent. Grand jury, they say you can indict a ham sandwich. And Justice Scalia, in the case I always talk about, United States versus Williams, where he said the grand jury belongs to the American people, not the three branches of government, said you don't need evidence at a grand jury. You're going to get an opportunity to prove your innocence if you're indicted in a court of law.
Right.
Okay. Now, in this case, in a civil context, is that you just have to allege, with some degree of credibility, that something is likely true. But what has happened here is there's dicta. This isn't a ruling of the Supreme Court, but it's called dicta. There's something written in a case called Twombly, where judges are using this as an excuse to get rid of cases. And Uvell tried this too, that if it's not plausible, they can dismiss it. Well, who are they to decide what's plausible or not? They are not God. They were not put here to be God. They were put here to protect the American people. They were put here to protect the little guy over the tyrant, over the tyranny of individuals and kings and monarchs and ourselves. But judges have taken on this mantle, federal judges, because they're immune from, number one, being sued generally, and number two, from being removed. They have life tenure. So they feel that they get to sit there and decide what's plausible and what's not. And this is outrageous. And this is what's scary, because when Uvell dismissed Mueller's case, I issued a statement to the media. You'll see it in that column at freedomwatchusa.org, that, and I'm just paraphrasing, that it would appear that Judge Uvell made a very political decision, that what she and other federal judges frequently do is protect the political elite in Washington, D.C., their brothers and sisters, and that this is extremely dangerous. And this is exactly the situation that led up to July 4th, 1776. Now, in addition to taking our legal system back to England, King George III, he also took away our guns. He was also busting into our homes with unreasonable searches and seizures.
Guess what? That's all happening as well.
It's happening today. It's worse today, Jason.
Yeah.
It's worse.
Yeah.
Because King George III didn't have an NSA. He didn't have a CIA. He didn't have mass surveillance where you can coerce people And, I have information I've gotten over the years that, in fact, Chief Justice Roberts was surveilled. Judge Lamberth was surveilled. Judge Leon was surveilled, who dismissed the NSA case ultimately after he issued a couple injunctions. They can get to you. And, these intelligence agencies and the FBI have dirt on every major person in this country, as well as the so-called powerful in Washington, D.C., the judiciary. And they can manipulate a finding because people don't want it out, their dirty linen. And like I said, in today's day and age, and I don't know one way or the other, but if Chief Justice Roberts is gay, okay, if he's bisexual or whatever the case may be, it's not a dirty word anymore. It's not a crime. People don't look sideways anymore. It's accepted. But people of that generation don't want that out. And there are other things that other people may have, in their background that they don't want out. And this can be used to coerce them. And this is why when a judge, goes south, so to speak, and does things for the wrong reasons, and does not follow the law and does not follow the Constitution, he should be subject to impeachment. He should also be subject to being removed from that case. Yeah. But we also have a system here where you can't even remove judges from cases unless they remove themselves, because they get to make the decision whether to remove themselves. And then if it goes to a higher authority like a judicial council, it's their fellow judges who they eat lunch with and socialize with, and they're not going to remove a fellow judge because they don't want to be removed if the same motion is sent towards them. And you say, Larry Klayman, yours truly will talk about this, but most lawyers won't because they're worried about retaliation.
Absolutely. Let me take you back to this Twombly thing for a second, because this plausibility question, it's a big deal. I obviously am not a lawyer and my understanding of the law is very limited, but I had understood that this plausibility measure was like, I can't sue Larry Klayman for being a giraffe because either you're a giraffe or you're a person, and if you're a giraffe, you're not susceptible to the law, and it's not illegal to be a giraffe. But I could sue Larry Klayman for breach of contract, and because that is a cause of action and something, it's plausible that someone could breach a contract, they accept it as true. We go to court, you say, I don't know this guy, we never had a contract, he has no evidence, and then it goes away. What am I not getting here?
I don't mean to use, this humor. I'm not a homophobe, Jason, and I'm not an anti-LGBTQ person either. Right. But in today's world, who knows what you are, frankly. I mean, you could be a giraffe.
But it's not a cause of action. I can't go into court. I could file that, and a judge would dismiss it as implausible and ridiculous, right?
Yeah, and that's the extreme, okay? But not every single day of the week. And judges are seizing on this, and they're deciding what's right and what's wrong, and they're not giving people an opportunity to ask written questions or get documents or take oral testimony through deposition. They're cutting cases off because they want to clear their docket, or they don't want a hot potato on their docket, because if they make a ruling in a particular way, most judges, not Judge Lamberth, who's a senior judge, but others, they're not going to get an appointment to a higher post, whether it's an appellate court, the Supreme Court, job in the White House as White House counsel or whatever.
And they don't want to be embarrassed by an appeal, right? They don't want to be seen as making stupid decisions.
Well, yes, and in this cesspool of corruption, we used to call it the capital of corruption. I've changed the first word. It's a cesspool of corruption. Is that, they all go to parties together. They want to be accepted. They're part of one giant club. Ha, ha, ha. We're superior to everybody else. We're an insider group. You can see it in the cable networks. You can see it everywhere in Washington, D.C., wherever you go. Like I've always said, I'm from the Groucho Marx school. I wouldn't want to be a member of a club that would have me as a member. Yeah. I don't want to be a member of this club. It's corrupt. It's destroying this country. And it's exactly why, we declared independence in 1776. When the judges, who are important public servants, meant to protect us from the tyranny of the other two branches of government, and from ourselves, when they become corrupt, when they become co-opted, when they become yes men, when they become cowards, when they will not do their job for whatever reason, then we are left defenseless. And our only option is what Jefferson predicted, a revolution every other generation. I don't want to see that, but I think we're headed for that, Jason.
I hope that's not the case, Larry. So it's interesting because, I obviously haven't dealt with nearly the number of federal judges that you have, but so far all the federal judges that I've spoken with about getting cases dismissed, even though the cases are ridiculous, implausible, and have no evidence to support their claims, those federal judges have told me that you cannot dismiss a case prior to discovery because the whole purpose
They
is...
told you that. You are Jason Goodman, okay? You're not Hillary Clinton. You're not Robert Mueller. You're not James Comey. You're not John Brennan, Clapper, or whoever. When you are the elite, there's a different standard, okay? So if it's a case involving Jason Goodman or Larry Klayman, let's let it go forward. But when it's one of our elite brothers and sisters, no. We'll protect them because they want them to protect us. And that's the problem. And that's what happened in the days leading up to the Declaration of Independence.
Apparently, I've triggered one of our viewers who identifies as a giraffe, so I apologize to the LGBTQG community. But Larry, what can people do? This is an incredibly frustrating situation, and we rely on this justice system to keep civility and justice, frankly, but it's a system of injustice inherently.
It is, Jason, and this is what I'm saying is that, you know, I have paid the price for speaking out. I've been doing that since 1994 when I founded Judicial Watch. You know, I said if I did not find Judicial Watch, found it at that time, and Judicial Watch, of course, has changed over the years. It doesn't do what I did. Freedom Watch does what I used to do at Judicial Watch. Freedom Watch does the hard-hitting cases. We're in front of federal judges with real clients. You know, you never lose a Freedom of Information Act case. Right. That's why Fitton and the other directors, called, to use the term loosely, at Judicial Watch, that's why, you know, they beat their chest and brag another Judicial Watch victory. You know what? You'll always get documents in a FOIA case. The question is, what do you do with the documents when you get them? Okay, but I founded it because I reached a point where I wanted to create a private justice department because our Justice Department was protecting the elite and the powerful. And, you know, I said to myself, you know, if I don't do this, I don't want to be a lawyer. You know, as I've also said before, I'd rather flip hamburgers and make cheeseburgers at McDonald's, okay, than be a lawyer. I'm an ideologue. I believe in the justice system. I'm an optimist. But I'm not going to go along to get along. I'm not going to go along to feather my own nest, to enrich myself, to make myself popular, and not say things that are controversial so I can get on Fox News and raise money for Freedom Watch or whatever. I'm going to say what I believe is true, because if we don't have people in this country saying what's true, then we can't change the system. And Trump has actually said what's true, is that our federal judiciary is by and large corrupt. And they're corrupted by the politics, they're corrupted by the money, they're corrupted by the prestige, and they're corrupted by the power. Now, there are some good ones. Maybe in my entire lifetime, I've met 5 who have the courage to do what needs to be done. I can name some of them. Judge Stanley Sporkin, Judge Lamberth in some situations, not this one. Judge Leon in one situation before the intel agencies probably got to him because he was being surveilled. You know, so occasionally you'll get a good decision, but when the powerful are involved, when they themselves are litigants, the American people, you know, be damned, like King Louis XIV, 15th said, "Après moi the deluge," after me the flood. Okay, they don't give an shit what's going to happen to this country. They care about themselves. And most of the lawyers in this country are the same way. They'll never sacrifice their own standing. They'll never go 100% for their client unless their client's paying them millions of dollars to do it, because they're worried about their own standing more than they're worried about their own client. And I've had lawyers represent me in that regard. And I'll tell you, it's unnerving to see it, because most lawyers think about themselves, number one, and their clients in the country, number 2.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me. I was in the Giuffre versus Dershowitz hearing, and obviously Alan Dershowitz is represented by counsel, but I mean, he was basically prompting them to say everything they were saying. It's confusing for a layperson to understand why lawyers operate in that way, and obviously lawyers always tell you, you know, a doctor wouldn't perform brain surgery on themselves. It's not quite the same thing, but I get where they're coming from. What's the reason, Larry? Would you never represent yourself in any matter?
I have represented myself in certain matters, but I prefer not to.
Right.
Sometimes you have to do it for a cost factor because lawyers are also prone to run up fees.
Yes.
You know, I hate to say this, but most lawyers overbill. I've seen that in law firms that I worked in. I didn't. They churn the fees, and they take advantage of their clients. And, you know, unlike a doctor, if a doctor screws up, say he leaves a sponge in your stomach or scissors or something, you know, you're going to figure it out eventually. But when a lawyer screws up, it's very hard for the client to figure that out. And it's very hard for the client to discern how much time a lawyer put in because they're not a lawyer. So that's the problem that we have. I am the anti-lawyer. The lawyers are as bad as the judges. The judges are chosen, you know, from their role,
lawyers,
prior practice as lawyers. You know, European system is no better than our system, but our system is just as bad as theirs. But in Europe, at least, if you want to be a judge, you go to a special school. You don't become a lawyer, you become a judge. They teach you how to analyze a problem, an issue, a controversy. They teach you proper demeanor, how to behave, and it's a whole different track. Now, in this country, it's like Dr. Strangelove. It's like, you know, they pluck someone. If he's a defense lawyer, the judge thinks like a defense lawyer. If he was a prosecutor, he thinks like a prosecutor. If he was a corporate lawyer, he thinks like a corporate lawyer. Remember the scene in Dr. Strangelove where Peter Sellers, every time he sees the president, he does a Sig Heil, and he has to pull his hand down?
Yeah.
Because he's not in Nazi Germany.
Right.
I'm being extreme, but these judges don't know where they are half the time because they're not trained. They're not trained. And that's another problem in our system. They take CLE courses. Sometimes they go to seminars paid for by the special interests. The Supreme Court said that's okay. You can go to Hawaii and take all kinds of seminars, and these special interests pay for it. That's not bribery. So the Supreme Court didn't want to cut themselves off from these junkets, you know.
Larry,
and
Big
others.
Kahuna Man is watching us on Periscope, and he wants to know how we resolve this issue that the lawyers are sworn under oath to protect their clients jealously. They just ignore that?
They ignore it. And if you decide to file a bar complaint against a lawyer, if the lawyer tends to be on the right side of the street, usually on the left, which the bar associations generally are, at least in the District of Columbia, the disciplinary council, that is, then nothing will happen. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, Ty Clavenger, who's a courageous guy, former justice lawyer, filed a complaint against David Kendall, Williams and Connolly for destroying 33,000 email with Hillary Clinton. The Bar Council in the District of Columbia threw that complaint in the trash. Same thing happened in Maryland, which is equally as leftist as D.C. But if you file that against a conservative lawyer, you can bet that that's going to go forward, okay, and that they're going to recommend, you know, some kind of harsh sanction, if not disbarment, for something like that. And so what we face today in terms of this country, why it's being pulled apart, is because it's not just the left fake news media. It's not just the jackals in Congress that are trying to impeach President Trump. It's not just the executive branch where you have a deep state that the president is not even in control of. You can see how they're trying to destroy him from within the White House and the intel agencies. And it's also the judges who, by and large, are to the left these days. There's the Trump judges that were appointed. They're not much better than the others. They're generally quite, for lack of a better word, cowardly. They're part of the establishment. They don't want to stick their neck out. So there's no one protecting the American people, by and large. Almost no one on the bench. And the judges were put there as a check against the tyranny of the other branches of government. And they will not protect us at the expense of their brothers and sisters in the elite Washington, D.C. and establishments around the capitals of this country in the various states. And that is a huge problem. So what do you do? Contact me if you have an idea, you know, at leklayman@gmail.com. You know, communicate with us at freedomwatchusa.org. What do you do when the legal system has totally broken down? And that's why last Friday, I believe, you know, I'm religious, Jason. I know I'm rambling here a little bit.
No,
I believe God wanted me to see that last Thursday. He wanted me to see an ultra-leftist Clinton judge. And then he wanted me to see a judge who I always thought was on the side of the people subvert the rule of law on the same day. And that was a watershed moment in my career. I mean, I've seen it throughout, but this was like the final straw for me on the same day. And, I'm contemplating what to do right now, frankly, because when you see it from both sides and you see what goes on and how these judges protect the rich, powerful, and the elite and protect themselves, what does the American people then do short of revolution? And I'm not advocating that violent. I'm advocating peaceful, but we need to find some way here. Maybe a constitutional convention. We need to change the way we choose judges.
I agree.
I want to do that. And they are our most important public servants, the very most important ones that are supposed to protect us, and they are the ones that are throwing us under the bus.
Yeah. Well, I'm hopeful, Larry, that I'd like to see General Flynn exonerated. I'd like to see Sidney Powell's efforts pay off. Perhaps this will shine a light on prosecutorial misconduct. I mean, you have defended clients like the Bundys who have been victims of gross prosecutorial misconduct. It's an ongoing kind of a thing, and you've spoken on this show in the past how surprising it is to you that even under the Trump Justice Department, Klayman Bundy and his family are still not getting justice. Any updates with regard to the Bundys, Larry?
So let's talk about Bundy, okay?
Yeah.
Had a judge in that case, Judge Gloria Navarro, who despised Bundy, despised me. She went to law school at Arizona State in Maricopa County, Arizona, so she knew that I represented Arpaio. She wouldn't let me in the case. I played a role in other respects, other lawsuits that I brought, and an advisory role. But she denied Klayman Bundy right of counsel. And she denied Klayman Bundy a speedy trial. She put him in prison for 2 years, put him in solitary confinement for 8 months.
It's terrible.
The hometown paper at the time, not owned at that time by Sheldon Adelson, but by someone, quite politically neutral, said that the prosecutors had a friend in Gloria Navarro. Now, why did Gloria Navarro ultimately dismiss the indictment? Not because, in my view, she was trying to do the right thing, not because she sympathized with the Bundys, but because it became so embarrassing and such a hot potato for her. She didn't want to go down with a sinking ship when prosecutors were caught lying to her, suborning perjury, when a whistleblower came forward that said there was a kill list on the heads of the Bundys, and all kinds of other things. She was saving her own skin. That's what I'm talking about. That ruling came out in Bundy's favor at that time, not because it was right or wrong in terms of Judge Navarro, but because she didn't want to go down with these prosecutors. Now, what happens after that? The U.S. Attorney in Nevada takes an appeal of the dismissal of the indictment. Why did the U.S. Attorney do that? Because they're the ones that committed the prosecutorial abuse. The Justice Department, Main Justice, exercised no control over taking that appeal. And the Solicitor General doesn't sign on the appellate documents. He or she's the one in the department. Now it's Noel Francisco that would have to approve an appeal. He's not even signing the pleadings. It's these prosecutors hoping they get a decision out of the Ninth Circuit on appeal that will exonerate them, or at least lessen the possibility that they're sanctioned for their prosecutorial misconduct. Of course, we know they're never going to be sanctioned for anything because the Justice Department doesn't sanction its own.
So just to decipher some of what you're saying, Larry, because I think it's going a little fast for people who might not know all the legal terms. Basically, there's the law, and then there's this political chess game to which the law is sort of like a peripheral aspect, that it's so much more complicated than just, following the law and getting defended, right? It all depends on who these judges know and what the situation is.
If you have two individuals or entities that, are not public figures, that are not well known, that haven't been discussed, smeared, or gotten accolades in the media, you get a fair decision. But if you've got politically powerful elites like Hillary Clinton, James Comey, Brennan, Clapper, McCabe, Strzok Page, or whoever, it's not going to happen 99% of the time. And what the point I was making with regard to Navarro is that she didn't dismiss it because, it was the right thing to do. She did it to protect herself. And then along comes the deep state in the executive branch of the Justice Department and appeals the dismissal. If we don't win that appeal, and we hope that you'll support us, go to Klayman Bundy defensefund.org, Klayman Bundy defensefund.org. Contribute to that. That's a private
.com, I think, Larry. KlaymanBundyDefenseFund.com I've got here.
It's .org.
Okay.
.org. It's both. It's both. You can get there either way.
Yep.
Is that if we don't win that, the Bundys could be back in trial, and if they're convicted again, because now the government has a roadmap, on how to proceed, they could wind up doing life in prison.
Jeez.
And this is the Trump Justice Department. This is, if you're going to buy frankly, excuse the French, the bullshit that you hear on Hannity, okay, that from a lot of sources, not just Hannity, but all of them, that Bill Barr is the savior, he's the new Messiah, the legal Messiah, then you just consider the fact that his Justice Department took an appeal of the outrage, the injustice that was done to Klayman Bundy and his family. And that's just one example.
Yeah, that's really bad. Now, Larry, I think I know the answer to this next question, but Big Kahuna Man is with us on Periscope, and while social engineers are attacking Crowdsource the Truth, trying to prevent us from bringing live streams to people, it is important that people tune into Periscope and some of the other outlets. I almost forgot to mention that today's broadcast is being simulcast on the Freedom Watch YouTube channel. So if people are looking for us on the Jason Goodman, the main Crowdsource the Truth channel, and aren't finding us, you can also go to Freedom Watch's YouTube channel and subscribe over there. A lot of people chatting on Freedom Watch. The question Big Kahuna Man wanted to ask you, Larry, and I think I already know the answer, would it be effective, or how effective do you think it would be to file a judicial misconduct complaint against a judge or an entire district court? Would that do anything?
Regrettably not. And I've done it many times, Jason. I do it on principle. What happens then is called judicial counsels of the United States. The case goes to a judge that's in charge of that judicial counsel, who is the colleague, the friend in the same courthouse as that other judge.
Right.
And they protect that judge, and they send you back some bullshit, excuse the French again, I'm being blunt, ruling where they ignore anything you say and come up with some bullshit as to why they can't hold the judge accountable, okay?
Yeah.
I've only gotten one judge sanctioned in 42 years that occurred in Tennessee when a judge broke through an attorney-client privilege. And even then, I couldn't find out from the Tennessee Court of the Judiciary what, if any, sanction she received. And she had done that with others, many others as well. One time in 42 years. Remember, what does Judicial Watch stand for? Watching judges. Okay, that's what got me to that point to start Judicial Watch. Now, Judicial Watch doesn't do that anymore. Very rarely. I do it. I stick my neck out. I pay the price. Now, with Judge Lambert, I'm going to send the complaint back to him with more specificity. We'll see what he does. I'm filing a new case.
Huh.
But
so if something's dismissed with prejudice, you just can't appeal it. You could file again.
Well, in this particular case, I can, because the basis of dismissing it with prejudice was not enough specificity. So you like my phrase, you asked for it, you got it, Toyota?
Right.
Well, Judge Lambert's going to ask for it, he got it, Toyota. If he wants to dismiss it again, let him dismiss it again. I'll have two appeals. But if you want to play the game, I'll play the game too. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I love you as a person, and you've done some good things. But this was not right. This was wrong. And even if it was Judge Arpaio, it was wrong. And frankly, it has shaken my confidence even more in the federal judiciary, even more than what Uvell did. I could have predicted what Uvell did. But what Lambert did to me was just beyond any imagination, even protecting Hillary during the Clinton years.
Big Kahuna Man is moving forward with the plan to file that judiciary complaint. I think he should. I mean, like you said, one time in 42 years, maybe there'll be two times.
It's interesting. In a state court, not a federal court. This was a state court. Never have seen a federal court take up an issue of judicial misconduct. And there was a case, I think, out in Texas or the far west once where a judge had allegedly even raped someone, and they covered it up on that
What?
too, a federal judge.
Larry, this is crazy.
Correct.
So wait a minute. Everything about our government is supposed to have checks and balances. Shouldn't there be some body of just like citizens who preside over, like maybe every year vote on the performance of a judge, and they randomly pick the citizens, and if they vote the judge out? I mean, we need something in place to stop this. It's way too corrupt.
We do, and that's why in the state system is that where a judge is elected, is that if he really makes or she makes a really bad decision, grossly negligent or intentionally, you can vote him out. And there's going to be a drive to vote that judge out, and at least we can get rid of them. But, you know, in our federal system, it's like herpes. I mean, it's forever, you know?
Wow.
I know I'm being a little colorful during this broadcast,
I like that,
but I am because I'm really I am super angry, super angry, Jason.
I understand, and with good reason. Now, there was just a headline here in New York the other day that a judge was actually arrested, which I was thinking about you. I was really shocked to see this. And this judge was arrested for obstructing justice, which is a good thing. This is, a good thing to be arrested for if a judge is doing that. It says Brooklyn Judge Sylvia Ash was arrested at LaGuardia Airport. So they're obviously looking for her,
Yes.
but...
Yeah, again, a state judge. Federal judge is much harder. You know why the FBI, look, why doesn't the FBI uncover the corruption on the federal judiciary?
I don't know.
You know, we are humans, okay? Bribery and extortion and everything else has existed since the beginning of time. Why doesn't the FBI why doesn't it investigate it? Because they're dependent on these judges to get convictions.
Right.
That's why. They look the other way.
It's a one hand washing the other kind of relationship where the FBI knows if they've got dirt on a judge and can make them go down, they can basically ring up that judge and say, hey, by the way, why don't you sink Klayman's case and waste all of Corsi's money and make Arpaio look foolish, et cetera, et cetera.
Look at the Jeffrey Epstein situation. Another thing about Barr, okay? They're very quick at the Justice Department to accept the initial, whatever it was, of suicide. Now we know it's a murder. Okay. What the heck has the Attorney General been saying or doing about that? Instead, he leaks bullshit that Durham is investigating Brennan and Clapper.
Yeah.
Durham is not going to do anything with Brennan and Clapper.
I agree.
Brennan and Clapper is head of the CIA, and the Director of National Intelligence has more dirt on everyone, including Barr. So it's all a game to make people think the government's doing anything when they're not doing anything, doing something. And what is the check to this? You know, you were there when I was arguing the Mueller thing. I had asked the chief judge of the court, who's a very nice person. I happen to like her. She's politically different than me. I asked her to investigate the grand jury leaks. Nothing.
Yeah.
No investigation. So the bell asked me, Mr. Klayman, I don't know that I have authority to, you know, allow this case to go forward on leaking grand jury information against Jerry Corsi. That's the chief judge's role. To investigate that, right? And she says, what has the Chief Justice done? I said, nothing. So what recourse does Corsi have? Yeah. Because, see, Mueller is one of them. Mueller is one of them.
Right.
He's a protected species.
Yeah. Yeah. So
they need to be endangered species, not protected species.
Yeah. Ben Kay is asking, Larry, can Wooten be called to the stand? Larry Wooten, the whistleblower in the Bureau of Land Management.
Excellent point. At the Ninth Circuit, I asked the appellate court to open the record, to send the case back on a limited remand to get the testimony of Larry Wooten. The court said, we're not going to do that now. We will consider that in the context of the overall appeal. Now, they're deciding what to do with that request. Just the other day, 2 days ago, I got a notice that we'll probably have oral argument sometime in March. At the Ninth Circuit, they have an affiliate satellite Ninth Circuit in Las Vegas, Nevada. Maybe we'll go to the casino and bet on exactly what may happen.
On the outcome. But, so, Larry, this is a very ignorant question, but we hear about district court, we hear about circuit court. I could be wrong, but I understand that district court is just federal court, and circuit court is the appeals court, right?
Correct, and then you have the Supreme Court.
And so the different districts are just what states they cover? Is that the idea?
Yeah, there are different districts in the United States. There are 11 districts right now in the United States, and maybe there'll be 12 sometime in the future. They may pry California off from some of the other Western states.
Who decides all that?
Congress will decide that. So, let's get back to the Chief Justice again. He's my favorite target, okay? Because if the Supreme Court Chief Justice says that judges are not influenced by politics, that there's no such thing as biases and prejudices, then he should be impeached just for taking that position, because that's an outright lie. He's lying to the American people. And if the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court thinks he can lie to the American people and get away with that, then he should be removed.
Yeah. And is there a process in place to do that? Could an individual American begin, like we've got Big Kahuna Man here, who is going to write this, complaint, judicial complaint. Could an individual citizen start a process to remove the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court? There should be a mechanism for that.
No, because it has to start at the House Judiciary Committee level. And you'll love this one. This is another Chief Justice Roberts special. Years ago, there was an alleged conflict with regard to, I think it was Obamacare, because two of the judges on the court, Justice Sotomayor, I believe it was, and Clarence Thomas, it was alleged that they had a conflict of interest and that would have been an ethics violation. I don't believe Judge Thomas did. It was simply the fact that his wife worked for an organization that was against the enactment of Obamacare. But in the case of Sotomayor, she was a Solicitor General making recommendations in that regard, and she did have a conflict. And in response to that, I believe I had filed a motion to disqualify Sotomayor, and not too long after that, Chief Justice Roberts came out in the annual report to the judiciary saying that Supreme Court judges don't have to adhere to the Code of Judicial Responsibility, that it may even be unconstitutional. Unbelievable. He basically said, we're above the law, we don't have to account, and that we are above reproach because we've been cleared by the Senate when we get confirmed, and therefore we're as pure as the German snow. Well, you know what? They're not good.
But now they're talking about, they want to impeach Kavanaugh.
Can you believe this guy's Chief Justice of the Supreme Court? I mean, it's unreal.
I think it's one of these positions that really, for the longest time, most people in the United States didn't care about at all. I think the rapidly deteriorating state of justice in America has caused a lot more people to kind of pay attention to what's going on. And I hope it's not too late. Larry, we're just about out of time for today. A couple minutes left. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover before we close?
Well, again, the same thing is that we, the American people, need to take stock of where we're going. Is that we need the truth. We don't need BS on Hannity or Fox News or MSNBC or CNN or any place else. Get up off the couch, put the beer and popcorn down, call up Freedom Watch, Freudian slip, and join our Justice League, or do something else to try to peacefully and legally change the downward spiral of this country. Now, I don't have the answer right now. I'm doing the best I can. Yes, I win cases. But I've always said, people said, Larry, why do you file so many cases? Because it's like a MIRV missile. If 1 in 10 get through, that's a success. We need to have them all get through. And we need to start with getting better judges. Because without them, we are left defenseless, just like our colonialists were left defenseless. And that's why they waged a revolution. So we are at a crossroads. Now, today, it's Sheriff Arpaio and it's Jerry Corsi. Tomorrow, it will be you and your family that's thrown under the bus by a judge for political purposes or to serve the personal interests of that judge. And that's why this is such a serious matter. That's why I'm upset. I apologize for using colorful language. But if I don't use colorful language, I don't know what else I'm going to do. Because I believe in this country, I believe in the rule of law, I believe in the Constitution, and I'm tired, put it bluntly, in the bullshit that is emanated by the media and others who try to say that we are better than other countries. We're not. In many ways, we're worse when it comes to our justice system.
Yeah, there are a lot of really disappointing failures of the justice system that we've spoken about. Many of your clients, the Bundys. Dr. Corsi, thankfully, was snatched from the clutches of injustice, in large part thanks to you and his own bravery to stand up to Robert Mueller. That was very well done, Larry. I hope that people will go to freedomwatchusa.org and support Larry's team there. It's super difficult to do this kind of work, and Larry really needs your support. I think I might have briefly mentioned that Crowdsource the Truth is also under attack, so I hope that people will visit freedomwatchusa.org and donate generously to help Larry and his team carry on the fight for justice. And I also hope that people who are watching us right now on either the Freedom Watch YouTube channel, the Crowdsource the Truth 2 YouTube channel, Periscope, or Facebook was having an outage. We're really kind of crippled right now, Larry. So if people get on to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, you can continue to enjoy uninterrupted live streaming broadcasts, even while the social engineers attempt to take out the channel. They will not succeed as long as we have your support, and I hope that people will go there. Larry, thank you so much for joining me today. We'll have
Thank
you
you
back
for giving me the
very soon.
God bless you, my good friend.
And you too, Larry. Thanks very much. Don't miss Unseen Libya with Jimmy and Joanne Moriarty coming up tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'll see everybody then. Thanks for watching.